Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. According to the schedule, I'm supposed to mention Vasubandhu. I'm never even going to get to Vasubandhu at any point during the weekend, I don't think.
Hello?
Although I told Kim I was going to do that. Um, but I will talk about why we are approaching the Skandhas here, which is this. I just was in practice discussion with a member of the group, and I said, this is a fathomless subject. Okay, welcome to the March 2025 short intensive to open Appamada's spring 2025 practice period. As you see from the schedule that entrusted teacher Kim Mosley has sent out, we'll be meeting until 9 p.m. tonight, Austin time. And then from 6:30 to 7:45 a.m. and 7 to 9 p.m. tomorrow, Austin time. And from 8 to 5 on Saturday, Austin time. I'm enormously grateful to Kim for all his meticulous planning for this intensive. And I know that he had some help from Rosemary and maybe others in working on the schedule. And I'm very grateful for all of that work that went into it. Speaking of which, the schedule contains lots of additional information, including the times that Kim and I will be seeing people in practice discussion, something that usually until the last few intensives has not been arranged in advance. So I really like this. And again, my thanks to people who have the capacity for planning things out in a way that I do not. When we'll be seeing people in practice discussion, and most exciting to me of all, the time slots for participants in this intensive to make presentations on what their explorations of the five skandhas has brought up for them or awakened them to. The first I heard of organizing an intensive in this way was last year with one of Flint's intensives in Molokai. And then I've heard of other versions where there were presentations. I thought it was the whole group, but maybe it was a smaller number within the group, but certainly presentations by someone other than a lead teacher or lead teachers, where people tackled parts of a program like that. And I know it's been done in Minneapolis and Madison since. But this is the first intensive I've participated in with this particular format. And as I said, I'm excited. I know something about the commitment to practice and the wide-ranging life experiences, not to mention the goodwill and curiosity of all of you folks. I'm confident that this format will be much more engaging and enlivening than the traditional style, which I've heard Kim call the sage on the stage, where someone is giving a lecture while everybody else is, in relative terms, a passive sort of observer, recorder of what's being said. At UT Austin Astronomy, where I used to work many years ago, toward the end of my time as a fundraiser there, the astronomy professors initiated what they called flipped class scheduling. The students, instead of coming to school to hear lectures and then going home to do homework, would listen to recorded lectures at home and then come together to do their work. And this changed the dynamic completely of the classes, particularly after the professors began inviting undergraduate students, even freshmen, to be involved in original research in astronomy, so that the students were not just like hearing words about spectroscopy in a textbook. They were like given a task to perform in spectroscopy, to study stars and interstellar gas and that sort of thing, and had to figure out the vocabulary and the tools and everything that they needed. And this revolutionized the classes. Everybody was so much happier. So I see analogies to that situation in this type of intensive. I think that this offers a real opening for all of us. And again, you should know that this idea of doing it this way came from Kim, and maybe from Rosemarie, maybe from others, I don't know. But I know that there's been a lot of excitement about it, and I just want to acknowledge that. So Rosemarie's saying no, or I saw her shaking her head. But anyway, look at Kim on your screen, and on your screen, this idea originated. Know that this, and whatever may arise, whatever arises for all of us, may it lead to awakening. You know? In the beautiful traditional words that Peg and Flint set down for us and repeated many times, at least twice a year, over the last 17 or 18 years that I've been involved with Appamada, they would begin by saying, an intensive is a gift we give ourselves and that we give to each other. Intensives work by containing and focusing our energies. In a very short intensive like this one, it's even more important that we pay attention and guard that containment. In an integrated intensive, which leaves us alone considerable stretches of time in between briefer meetings, except of course on Saturday, even more is asked of us in terms of containment and paying attention to our intention. At work and at home, please think of your intention in joining this gathering and shepherd your energies for taking the backward step and shining your light inwardly. Show up on time for all the events on the calendar, which means at least 5 minutes early, as the schedule shows. If you're outside the Zendo, show up early too. And if you're outside the Zendo, please keep your camera on as much as you can so that other people know that you are there with them. And at the same time, keep your microphone off so that stray noises don't disturb the decorum of the Zendo. Whatever you can do to maintain respectful, connected presence will benefit each of us. That, in a way that kind of goes without saying for Jess and for Kim, who are in the Zendo now. They have the weight of tradition there with them. But for us on connecting through our little rectangles, it's a little harder to do that. Several people have volunteered for roles or have been assigned roles for the intensive roles. So let me say, anyone who has volunteered or has an assigned role for this intensive, would you raise your hands, and then when I call your name, just say what that role is. Could I ask you to do that, please? If you have a role. So there's Milan, Jess, of course, Kim, of course. Any others? Anybody else going to be an online monitor at any point?
Len.
Okay. So Milan's hand is up. Yeah. Okay. So I already gave a name. So Milan is an online monitor tonight. And what I want to say is now, let's bow to the people who have volunteered to help out with this intensive. The theme for the intensive is the Skandhas. The usual translation from the ancient Pali is that these are heaps or aggregates. And they are, in the usual translation into English, form, feeling tone, feeling, I always think feeling tone, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Form, the first one has to do with physical sensations, and the next four, feeling tone, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, all have to do with what happens in our minds as we encounter the world. These are the modes of encountering the world that we have. Suzanne shared today, did this get shared out to everyone, I hope? Maybe, maybe not. But I hope that Suzanne will share this tomorrow or during the course of the intensive, but a different translation. taking off from the translation that was done some decades ago by Bernie Glassman that has a different spin on some of the language in the translation, and then the implications of what those words mean. And again, I hope she'll be presenting that. The Buddha made our relationship to the Skandhas a central part of his teaching, because that relationship, if unexamined, plays a huge role in the suffering, dukkha, that he identified in the First Noble Truth. That's because we naively and innocently believe that what we know through the skandhas of the outside world is accurate, and particularly in regard to what arises kind of by inference from that knowing, which is like the conception of a separate self, which the Buddha said is an ignorant mistake that we're all kind of born into, and that we have the capacity to wake up out of. And he spent a lot of time teaching about the skandhas, as I say. He instructed his followers to examine the skandhas and to see if they could find a self within them. He began with the senses themselves, so like sight, sound, taste, touch. With sound, he said, you know, it's a marvelous faculty, but is it you? Is it yours? Can you control what you hear? Can you turn it off? Can you turn it on? Those, if you spend any time listening to things and kind of perceiving what's going on, you realize that you can't control what you hear. It's in fact something that moves through us, something that we inherit and that connects us with other beings, but does not give us any solid ground for imagining that we have a separate self. And so he does that with all the five sense organs, and then with the mind, and then the mind, again, it expands, it blossoms out into these other factors, the feeling tone, the way we react to things that we encounter pretty much unconsciously. Before we have any rational thought, we have already framed our relationship to what we're encountering as either pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, frightening or supportive or something like that, that we either welcome or push away experience before we even have any words for what it is. And then in the Satipatthana Sutra, he invites which Kim and I led an intensive on in January of 2024, which again is just, I will say it, it's fathomless. We could come back to it so many times, and I certainly intend to within whatever time I have left with Appamada. But he begins by saying something very strange, given that he wants to help people liberate themselves from the sense of having a separate self and being connected with all the world and realizing the truth of dependent co-arising and of impermanence. He says, okay, this is how you begin the foundations of mindfulness. You breathe in. And the monk who breathes in can know, I am breathing in long. I am breathing out long. I am breathing in short. I am breathing in short. And then he expands on that and goes step by step through all the skandhas, beginning each statement with, no, I am X. Now, this is very strange. Later on, he moves away from this from this, and he further develops the notion of anatta, the non-self quality of our experience, and how the the, the actual experience of our daily lives gives no support for any notion of a self. There's a sutra, called the Bahia Sutra, in which a holy man from a different tradition who's called Bahia of the bark cloth. So he wears bark cloth clothing. But he comes to see the Buddha, and the Buddha won't see him the first 2 times that he shows up. But finally, he comes back and he says, Bahia says to the Blessed One, "It is hard to know for sure what dangers there may be for the Blessed One's life, or what dangers there may be for mine. Teach me the Dhamma, O Blessed One. Teach me the Dhamma, O well-gone one. That will be for my long-term welfare and bliss." And the Buddha answers, "Bahia, you should train yourself thus. You should train reference to the seen and only the seen. In reference to the heard, only the heard. In reference to the sensed, only the sensed. In reference to the cognized, only the cognized. That is how you should train yourself. When for you there will be only the seen, in reference to the seen, only the heard, in reference to the heard, only the sensed, in reference to the sensed, only the cognized, in reference to the cognized. Then, Bahia, there is no you in connection with that. When there is no you in connection with that, there is no you there. When there is no you there, you are neither here nor yonder, nor between the two. This, thus, just this, is the end of stress. The end of stress. The end of the story goes on that the Buddha then went on with his alms round, and Bahia left, and he was killed by a cow just then. And the Buddha, having seen this, having gone, the Blessed One, having gone for alms and sabati after the meal, returning from his alms round with a large number of monks, saw that Bahia had died. On seeing him, he said to the monks, "Take Bahia's body, monks, and place it on a litter and carry it away, cremate it, and build him a memorial. Your companion in the holy life has died." So a big difference, I think, from the beginning of the Satipatthana Sutra, with its repeated instructions to invoke an I as a witness, as a witnessing faculty, to the Bahia Sutra, which has this very stark formulation. In the seen, only the seen. In the heard, only the heard, etc. That is the end of stress, the end of dukkha. So I hope that by examining the skandhas and approaching them with an open mind and a feeling of dedication, that we can do some more to move between the start of the Satipatthana with its naive conception of the self that the Buddha was probably responding to in his audience at that time, to the more subtle and demanding conception of what we are in this world that is neither here nor yonder nor anything in between, and yet everything in between. I know that Jess Amby is going to talk about the biopsychological reasons why the notion of separate self is so persistent. He's drawing on one of the readings that Kim sent out, which is a beautiful reading. I know because of the wonderful Way-Seeking Mind talk that Jess gave last weekend, that he will have some, I bet he'll have some insights on this as well that will go beyond what he read. That this notion of the separate self is so persistent and so self-renewing in every damn moment, in my experience, that it's really, it's almost an escape really, but it is almost, at least in my experience again, to kind of see around the edges a little bit. And so I hope that from some of the readings that I've done about biological and physiological and psychological things, that I can add something to what Jess is going to share. And then finally, I hope to end with the moral implications of the examination of the Skandhas and what it means to give up this persistent notion of being a separate self, so that we can end up giving up, as I say, this mistaken identification. And what can happen if we shift from conceiving ourselves as hard, ice-like particles, other hard ice-like particles, to thinking of ourselves as waves that interpenetrate each other, that shape each other continuously and continuously. That we can do that, that we change, in the words of someone I hope to be able to quote, Jay Garfield, that we change from selves to persons. And just what the moral implications of those, of that change would be, and how we can get there. And I'll give you a hint. It has to do with the Brahma Viharas. So that's it for me for this time.
So one of the ways that we could drop the self is in Skandhas, and I'd like to read something from Living by Vow that some of us have been reading, and I think it's a beautiful description of Skandhas, and a lot of this intensive will be sitting. Dogen taught that there are no steps in practice. He said that practice and enlightenment are actually one. If there were steps, there would be deluded people and enlightened people, and there would be a step from the deluded to the enlightened stage of mind. There would be a separation between delusion and enlightenment, and between deluded and enlightened people. This separation is itself delusion, because in the absolute realm, there is no step, no discrimination between delusion and enlightenment. Discrimination between enlightenment and delusion only exists in G. There is no distinction in Re. In unity or emptiness, delusion and enlightenment are not different, nor are samsara and nirvana, or deluded human beings and Buddhas. That's the teaching of emptiness. And this is what the 5 skandhas teach us. And that's why in the Heart Sutra that we'll be reading soon, and you've read it many times, Buddha says, no. Our practice does not proceed step by step. With this body and mind, we sit in both individuality and universality. We are often pulled by our own egocentricity. When we sit in this posture and let go of thought in our zazen, we have no technique. And for me, that's something we can just focus on, sitting in this posture. We have no object of meditation or contemplation. We don't concentrate our mind on anything particular. I can't imagine anything more difficult than this. We don't concentrate our mind on anything particular. We don't even pay special attention to our breathing. We don't count breaths. We don't visualize anything. We just sit in this upright posture, breathe through the nose, quietly, deeply, and smoothly, and let go of thought. To let go of thought means to allow whatever comes in to go out. We let any idea, desire, or imagination come up and then go free. Nothing stays forever. We don't try to control our mind. We simply keep our body straight, breathe quietly, and let go of thought. This is becoming a person that Joel's just talked about instead of a self. This is our Zazen based on Dogen Zenzi's teaching. Within this Zazen, individuality is not lost. This is my practice. No one else can sit for me. My sitting is mine alone. And yet within this sitting practice, we let go of our egocentricity. To let go of thought means to let go of egocentricity. This body and mind is really part of Buddha nature, not something separate. Within this Zazen, both Ji and Ri are manifested. Neither is negated, neither affirmed. Both sides rise naturally in this simple practice. That's the meaning of Dogen Zenji's expression. Practice and enlightenment are one. Practice is my own individual practice, and enlightenment is universal. There is no separation between my enlightenment and your enlightenment, but practice is individual. I cannot practice for you. Practice is my personal activity, which manifests the universal reality of life. This Zazen is itself the merging of difference and unity, not a step-by-step meditation practice. When we sit, we just sit. We express completely difference and unity, individuality and universality. To let go of thought is, I think, the most important point of our practice of Zazen. So all these, the 5 skandhas and Shinkantasa and everything else we do is really about ending suffering. And I think we need to keep this in our mind. It's not some great philosophical challenge, but rather it's to let go of suffering, and not just for ourselves. But if we can do it for ourselves, we can do it for all beings, especially those we come in contact with. And I saw Rosemarie had her hand up, has her hand up.
What were you reading from, Kim?
It's from Living by Vow, and I'll share it with you.